Hello, welcome to COCBLOK, the Coalition of Craft Beer Lovers of Kentucky. I am Matt. Go ahead.
Oh, wow. Hey, forget about me, man. I'm just sitting here.
You're leaning away from the microphone. I was getting ready to say your name.
But you've already forgotten who I am. 2 weeks. You haven't done this. You don't remember my name, do you?
You're not allowed to talk. But I got Jeff here with me. And we also have a very special guest, the creator of FARC.com, gubernatorial candidate, two-time synchronized swimming world champion.
Three times.
Three times.
Dumb wrestler.
Yeah. Mr. Drew Curtis. How are you,
How
sir?
you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming
great.
over here and drinking beer illegally in our studio. No, we're not drinking beer. Don't shut us down.
Probably not.
So, what's a typical Monday like for Drew Curtis?
Yeah, so I usually I spend most days going over the news cycle, but Monday in particular is kind of slow because media people are some of the laziest SOBs you've ever seen in your life. They don't like working on Sunday.
Yeah.
And so they show up at work Monday morning hungover and sweating alcohol.
Yeah.
And they haven't got anything to talk about, so they start writing in the morning.
It sounds like our radio show.
Yeah, doesn't it? Yeah. And so you get these things sort of trickling in. So like Monday mornings are the must-have stuff that happened over the weekend, but no more, no less, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, we're obviously going to get into some of the finer points of our interest topic of beer. And Woot Stout, which you are a 33% brewer on.
Yes.
But first and foremost, I'd like to kind of touch on some of the stuff. I'm pretty envious of you. I'm not envious of a lot of people. Actually, nobody that I can think.
You're envious of me,
except for maybe Jesus. But yeah, you created this website, FARC.com, which I have been. I told you earlier, not recently because I'm too busy, but I have been a subscriber to that website for years and years and years, and I've always found it very entertaining. But I'm fascinated by the fact that you created this thing from the ground up. Not only is it entertaining, which I find the most value at, but it is informative. Not in the respect that there's great information on there, but it illustrates how insanely ridiculous our mainstream media really is. It brings a lot of this stuff to light. And I've kind of, it's opened my eyes to like a few different things over reading over the years. But it makes me laugh my ass off all the time. But not only that, you've turned it into something that you can support yourself and your family with, and just what you did is extremely impressive. What kind of led you to create something back then? Because I know back then people were probably telling you this is a horrible idea.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but I mean, it was 1999, and it was kind of unclear as to what exactly was going to happen on the internet. Like at that point, we figured, okay, at some point there will be a lot of shopping. But other than that, like maybe some news and whatever. So, and I actually had the domain name for a couple of years, but I waited until I had an idea that sort of made sense. And one of the things that is interesting, because the way I have to explain this changes over time, and I'm sort of tickled as to where it's at right now.
Yeah.
In that people forget that back in 1999 it was hard to find weird news.
Yeah.
Now it's the entire news cycle.
Yeah.
It's all there is anymore. Yeah. I went from highlighting stuff that was sort of fringy out there, weird sort of one-off, the last 30 seconds of the show, you might get two of these too.
Yeah.
It's completely subsumed the entire news cycle, and not to our benefit. That's not a good thing. It's kind of like, I always use the analogy of like the problem that mainstream media's got right now, aside from all of the obvious ones, is that imagine, like, let's say that you're a fruit stand.
Yeah.
And you sell fruit, and you've been in business for a long time, and then one day you take inventory, and you find out that your number one seller is Doritos.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah. Do we keep going fruit?
Yeah. So if you're Fox News, you just throw in the towel and go, you know what? We're just going to go Doritos. We're a Doritos stand now. So and then if you're CNN, you go, oh well, we're still a fruit stand, but all we're selling is Doritos.
Yeah.
But no, we're a fruit stand.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that kind of thing. So it's been funny watching sort of how that's happened, because really what happened was it was the way that the news was consumed changed from bulk to a la carte.
Yeah.
And the minute it mattered what stories people were reading, all of a sudden it turns out they're reading the dumb stuff.
Yeah.
The ridiculous outrage pieces, the top 10 sandwiches of the month.
Yeah.
It turns out that we read all this garbage most of all, and so if you're the news media guys, you have to figure out how do you pivot on that one.
Anything with a list.
Yeah.
Anything is a list, it seems people just talk towards.
Or these 5 things that would surprise you about this thing you've never heard of before.
The largest zits on celebrities.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll never believe this.
Yeah, side boob gallery.
Side boob gallery, which I am a subscriber to.
A friend of mine runs the weird news section at the Huffington Post, and for years, the top click-getting articles still to this day is porn stars without makeup.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that thing outdraws almost anything else on the Huffington Post, and has for 5 years.
Yeah. And that kind of seems like an oxymoron, but it's funny how it kind of draws that much interest. I guess I could see why that's so.
People, it's a slideshow too, so there's like 100 pages of it. So it's not just one article that says, "Oh, here's what they look like." It's, click, 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 click.
Because you know what's going to happen. They're all going to look terrible.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So and then you can feel good about yourself.
Like, I did that to her.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, what was I thinking?
It's a little bit of schadenfreude there. It's like, oh, they look like normal people.
So who came first? Was it you or Boing Boing or Metafilter? We all kind of the same time period, the same kind of logic?
Metafilter was out a couple of months earlier. Boing Boing was out in zine form back in the early 90s.
Right. Zine form.
And that's from that children's book, right?
No, actually I didn't.
Gerald McBoing Boing. If you ever get that out of the library, Gerald McBoing Boing, where the kid always says is Boing Boing, and he becomes an outcast in society, and his parents get rid of him until he makes a living in radio as an announcer because he make all kinds of weird sounds, and then his parents come back to him and accept him again because now he's famous and rich.
He's got a marketable skill now.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like,
all I could say was noises. Nobody cared about him.
Yeah.
And then when he could make money doing it on the radio, his parents were like, we love you now.
It's like child celebrity parents.
It's a great,
we love you, but we're going to control your bank account.
It's a great story about parenting. But so Boing Boing was a zine first, and then it became the website of Cory Doctorow.
Yeah, I know those guys pretty well. We cooperate a lot on joint venture type stuff. Usually trying to figure out, what's going on with web traffic in general and things like that. So we share a lot of information.
It's all finding like the stuff that we wouldn't normally look at on the internet and bringing that to the forefront.
Yeah, I was telling him back in the day I submitted a couple articles which were
to FARC.
Yeah, which were pretty bad in retrospect. I remember it was like
what were they about?
Grandma dies at 93. And that's kind of
Grandma dies at 93. It's not it's like outrageous.
There's nothing funny or anything about that.
I'm falling asleep just thinking about it.
Yeah, and I was like, why was I not selected?
Everybody's grandma dies.
Yeah. But like back in 99, I think my internet was like a
Boy
phone.
Gets Pimple.
It's a phone with like the coil cord on it.
Yeah.
That you actually hung up. You remember you had to hang it up on the thing, and it made the when you like signed up, and then
You're talking about dial-up?
Yeah.
It's called dial-up.
Well, I know what dial-up is, but I'm trying to paint the picture because not everyone's going to see the video.
That's another fun thing too, is like talking to college students, like and watching how far things have shifted.
Yeah.
Because my first company was a dial-up ISP, and they're like, "Oh, what's that?" And I'll go, "Don't worry about it."
What's dial-up?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's not enough time.
No, it doesn't matter. It's not important.
Well, you've been doing that for a long time, and it's come a long way. And I remember when I first found out that you were actually from here, I was just kind of blown away because I was on that website all the time. But you have you're friends with a lot of influential people. You have become an influential person, which I think is remarkable. And then you decided, I guess, to kind of try your hand into a little bit more political arena, and so you actually ran for governor.
Yeah, and that was interesting too, because I have a lot of people ask me, because basically people break down into one of two veins. Either they like politics a lot, or they don't at all. And there's not a lot of like hobbyists out there,
Yeah.
And so what's funny is that if you don't care about it, then that's not anything you ever thought about. But if you care a lot, when I tell people that the idea I had is like maybe we could get some normal people who don't care about politics involved in this, and watching the reactions on the faces of the aficionados who are just like, what do you mean everybody doesn't like this? It's like, when you're in Thanksgiving and you make everybody mad and they leave the table because you're talking about some garbage. That's you're the problem.
Exactly.
And I got the idea from, I was challenged by a friend, which is basically I was complaining about the quality of candidates that we've got, because and not unsurprisingly they still suck. And so somebody challenged me. They said, well, why don't you do it? And I was like, well, I don't want to because it's hard. And they said, well, why would anybody else do it then? And I was like, well, okay, good point. So I gave it a shot. I found out I didn't think that I did all that well. I got about 4% of the vote. But as an independent that spent $0 on the campaign,
and I think that's incredible. You didn't go to traditional route.
I did all social media.
And for what you did, the percentage that you acquired is actually pretty. That's really impressive.
Yeah, for the money, it was amazing.
But if you won, you would have had to move to Frankfurt.
Yeah, well, I live in Versailles. I could probably commute it.
Well, that would be a problem.
Yeah,
for me. It's like, oh man, I got to move over there.
Yeah,
not a lot of good beer. And
I know. I could just drive back and forth.
I guess so.
Yeah. But no, the idea was really, it wasn't that I never wanted to be in politics per se, and I never had any vision of how government ought to be run. It just seems like the way that it's done right now is bad.
Yeah.
And there's a lack of normal not crazy people involved in that. It's all full of like, I mean, everybody I ran into was pretty much like a sociopath or, just a crazy person, one way or the other. You know, it takes a special kind of nut job to run for office at all.
Yeah.
And I kept getting that question too. It's like, are you narcissistic or a sociopath? Which is it? And I'm like, it's neither really. I don't feel like I get along well with others, and I don't really feel like I am owed this job, but I wish somebody like me had it.
Yeah. If he says neither, then it's got to be narcissist. Right?
Yeah. It's like, well, but I get it because everybody else I ran into, it's one or the other, or sometimes both.
Are you saying Matt Bevin is a narcissist?
Maybe.
Oh my God! How could you say that?
I think you should make your own decision, but it won't take long. I'll put.
Is
it
there
like
any evidence to that?
Yeah, there might maybe.
Yeah, maybe a little.
Maybe.
So I guess the percentage return on what you actually put in that campaign is it's infinity percent.
Yeah. Well, what I found out from talking to party people is, and again, I'm looking at this thing from a complete outsider. I never studied politics, and they have their own crazy rules for how it works. It's almost like feng shui.
Oh, okay.
But in the same way that feng shui seems like it ought to work, but nobody can prove it.
No.
Political science is kind of on the same vein.
Yeah.
It's like there's all these things you're supposed to do that I found are wrong. Like one of them is don't appear to be too smart. Okay. You're not supposed to do that. Turns out nobody cares. What they don't want you to do is beat them over the head with it.
Yeah.
I figured that out because somebody told me they'd met Ben Carson, and apparently he does that. He's a very smart guy.
Yeah.
And,
Ben Carson?
He's a smart guy. I swear.
What?
He's a brain surgeon somehow.
Well, that's the part I don't understand. He's got to be smart because he can open up a person's body.
Yeah.
And just do whatever he does, but then you listen to him talking, like, what's going on
you're like,
here?
What's he saying? Yeah, once you get outside of neuroscience, he goes way off the rails. Turns out he doesn't know much about anything else. But he beats you over the head with his intellectualism, and I don't do that because that's not cool.
And Trump does that too.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, he wishes he could.
Well, I think he just like beats you over the head.
Yeah, he just beats you over the head with whatever is lying around. Actually, so here's a good Trump story. So, I've never met the guy, but I know a lot of people in New York who are finance guys.
Yeah.
And I was having lunch with one a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, hey, wait a minute, Doug, the guy owns 24/7 Wall Street, which is a financial blog, and it does pretty well. And I was like, you've been a finance guy in New York for like 30 years. You know him, don't you? And he goes, oh, yeah. I know Donald Trump. And so, like, if you go into Doug's office, there's a photo of him with every president going back to Reagan.
Really?
Except for W.
Okay.
Well, I don't know why that is, but he doesn't have a lot of good things to say about him. But at any rate, so I was like, so what's he like? Is he like, is he just like a crazy jerk or what? And he goes, well, he's like, let me put it to you like this. He's like, so he's similar to Bill Clinton in that they're both sinners. But Bill Clinton is clearly intelligent and his heart is in the right place, and Donald Trump is not two of those. And I was like, oh God.
Yeah. I like better that your friends calling people sinners.
Yeah. Well,
they are sinners.
They're sinners. Yeah. Well, and especially coming from a Wall Street guy, I think there's a special connotation.
Yeah.
If you got a Wall Street guy calling somebody a sinner,
really.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
my name's Satan. This guy makes my skin crawl.
Yeah. Satan's gonna abdicate and let you take over. Is basically what that means. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Why don't you cue something up and we'll take
ready to go for a break?
Yeah, take a little break, and then when we get back, we'll do some beer related.
Yeah, so we're here on WLXU FM 93.9 in downtown beautiful Lexington on this beautiful summer day.
Welcome back to COCBLOK, the coalition of craft beer lovers of Kentucky. I'm Matt.
And I am Jeff.
And we got a special guest, Mr. Drew Curtis, with us today. We're talking about politics and everything that's wrong with everybody, and
everything is wrong with everybody.
Yeah, everybody's stupid.
I'm sick of it. I'll be honest.
I hate everybody.
Yeah.
On Facebook, I'm just sick of everybody.
People are the worst.
People.
Yeah.
Well,
He's
that's
actually
right,
a
and that's
doctor
your
on Facebook.
opinion about people's contributions to information, and about kind of like the Clay Shirky, user-centered, whatever, prosumer. You think people are just stupid. We don't care what people say.
Yeah, well, I think they're missing a step in there too, which is basically for a while there was this thing put forth about the wisdom of crowds.
Wisdom of crowds.
I used to have to rail against, but now that we're 10 years down the line, I think everybody kind of sees where I was going with that. But there is wisdom in crowds, but it takes people to pull it out. And
There's also mob mentality.
Yeah, crowds are not wise. They're stupid, hungry, and horny.
Yeah,
and that's basically all they got going for them. And what it takes is you need somebody who can jump into the crowd and go, "Hey, I know what we all had to do today.
Yeah,
it's something good, and whatever that is," and then take off and go. Or who here knows the information we need? But if you don't have that, you've just got chaos.
Yeah, that's mob mentality.
Yeah,
which is also the beer world.
Yeah,
online.
Yeah,
go figure.
It's massive mob mentality.
Yeah. Well, we got you have a really good beer coming out pretty soon that you were a collaborator with Stone Brewing. It's Woot Stout. This is what iteration is this?
This is 4. This is version 4.
Are you all calling it 4.0 or just?
I think so. I'm not sure.
So who was involved with this? Oh, you're listening to 93.9 FM, by the way. I don't think we've said that once, but
I think people can like look at their dial too.
I would hope so.
What station am I listening to?
I would hope so. Yeah. But so who were the collaborators on this one?
Yeah, so it was it's except for 1 year, it's been Will Wheaton of Star Trek Big Bang Theory fame, and Greg Cook, who's of Stone Brewing Company fame, who's the founder.
So it's you three again. You had Aisha Taylor. Tyler.
Yeah, we had her take over on Woodstock 2 because Greg went on a sabbatical that year.
Okay.
And he strongly believes that you can't put your name on a beer that you don't personally make some of yourself.
Okay.
And he was going to be gone.
Aisha Tyler, the comedian?
Yeah.
From Talk Soup and Friends?
That's
hilarious.
Well, here's how that happened, by the way. So he gets ready to take off for the year, and he's like, you got to find somebody else to replace me. He's like, but he's got to be somebody who's a geek who homebrews.
Oh, she
And
homebrews.
I was thinking, and so I just punched it in, and I thought, well, we should have somebody who's a woman, because you don't see that too often.
Yeah.
And I punched in female geek homebrew celebrity, and Aisha Tyler, boom.
Man.
And because she is a homebrewer, and also the thing that got caught in the search is that she had brewed all of the beer for her own wedding.
You're kidding me.
When she was on Talk Soup, she was like one of the last hosts of the Talk Soup show. I don't know if you ever saw that on E! I had a real crush on her.
She's awesome.
Well, I think everybody's got a crush.
You know, some people are just famous, and that's all right. But some people are as cool as they are famous, and she is.
Well, she's so well put together, and she's very eloquent. When
she's amazing.
Yeah, she knows what she's doing.
She's so much fun to hang out with. The other fun thing about it is like hanging out with her. When I hang out with Will, people are like walking up to him trying to get his autograph all the time, which is totally fine. But nobody does that with Aisha because like she's sort of invisible as a black woman. Like if you're in New York. That's just so. Who knows who that could be? You know, there's no telling. Not to say that it never happens, but people tend to. She's sort of a little bit invisible.
Yeah,
and she totally doesn't mind that.
And she seems very grounded.
So you all got to San Diego and you do this all together?
Yeah. So we fly out there and you make a little bit of it out there, and then we're there. That I like that part of it because you get to see how it's all put together. Or it's kind of like it's like doing homebrew stuff, but instead of like just but the proportions are enormous. Like when you start putting together the grains or whatever, you're opening up 40-pound bags, like 140-pound bags with a box cutter and dumping them into this thing.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about beer is that it scales, rather proportionately. Whereas if you make a recipe, it doesn't always work that way, and something will explode. So with beer, you just be like, jack that crap up. Let's go ahead and pour it all in there.
Well, they found that too. Like some of it scales proportionally and some doesn't. Will worked with. Oh, I forget who it is, but you can Google this and find it. But there is a homebrew recipe version for Woodstock.
Okay.
And it is pretty good, but they went through 3 or 4 iterations on it because it wasn't just reducing the size of it. It turns out
Did he try to make it?
He worked with somebody, I want to say it was like, I forget it wasn't like Left Coast Brewing, or it was some brewing association out in LA somewhere.
Okay.
And,
that's cool. So he helped create this beer, and somebody else tried to recreate the recipe he created. So he created the recreated recipe that he created.
Yeah, we gave him a copy because every different version of Woot Stout is different.
Yes.
They tweak it slightly every single time because the first time they did it, the idea was this is a one-off. Yeah. Because Stone makes collaboration ales all the time. Yeah. But I remember when we were making it, I asked Greg. I said, "So what would it take to make this a regular product?" And he said, "Well, if it smashes all known sales records, we'll totally turn that into a regular product." Okay. And then it did.
Oh, there you go.
So it was like, oh. All right. Well, what was interesting about it was, and this is something that is rarely seen out there, is when you have a completely unknown product that appears on the market, especially as crowded as it is now, and then sells the hell out instantly within 24 hours nationwide.
Yeah, and it doesn't. It is a great.
It's a big hit for a 22-ounce bottle.
Yeah,
stout.
It's a strong beer. It's a really good beer, and it doesn't hurt that you have some influential people on there and some cool names that kind of push back people that are actually in beer geeks, but also are like have other facets of life that they're very interested in. But batch 1, so let's go through the batches. I don't even know if you can remember. Batch 1 was the basic recipe is what? It's got nuts of some sort in it, right?
Yeah, it's mostly the same flavor profile. It's Derby pie is what.
Okay.
If you want to get right down to it, so it's fun trying to have to explain that when I'm not in Kentucky, but around here we all know, pecan pie with bourbon. So, but what was interesting about it is that we were kind of going with it. We went down that road because Will's initial suggestion was a chocolate stout. Okay. And apparently on the West Coast, chocolate stouts have been beat into the ground, and Greg didn't want to make another one. Yeah. So I was like, well, we could put vanilla in there, and they're like, well, what else would you put in there? I was like, caramel, pecans and bourbon, and they're like, what? That's awfully specific. What are you describing exactly? So
That's what I was raised on as a baby.
Yeah, well, and the question became, so it was two things that Stone had never done before simultaneously. They'd never made a bourbon barrel anything until that point.
Really?
Yeah, they just hadn't got around to it.
I always find
That's
that hard
the first
to believe.
one.
Yeah. Since then, they've made a crap ton of them because they were like, "Oh, this is good."
Yeah.
But you also have to remember, and this is why I almost didn't suggest it to him, is because in Kentucky they're everywhere, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought maybe that was a nationwide thing. It's actually local to here because if you go much farther outside of Kentucky, getting a bourbon barrel is really hard.
Yeah.
But Greg managed to pull it off.
Yeah.
So, but the idea was that the real question was whether or not the second thing was they never made anything with nuts in it either.
Yeah.
And the real question was like, what would that do?
Yeah.
Now Greg's sort of a dice roll kind of guy, so he didn't check it out. He's like, you know what, fine, let's just do it.
And do it. Yeah.
And it turns out after the fact, he and I were talking about, I was asking him, so what do you think makes this exceptional? Because everybody thinks it's exceptional, but I was like, what is it? And he said it's the mouthfeel from the pecans.
Yeah,
that's right.
And
it kind of has a release those oils and stuff.
Yeah, it's just got a different thing. And he said when you've got beer markets that's just so overrun by every possible combination of anything, it takes a really unique something to make it stand out. And he said, in mouthfeel in this case this is unique. Interestingly, there is a pecan beer made by I can't think of it, somebody out of Austin or Georgia or somewhere, which has a very similar, it doesn't taste the same, but the mouthfeel is identical.
Yeah.
And I asked a really good friend of mine who lives here in town, who's a pastry chef, Stella Parks, about what do pecans do for Derby pie, and she said pecans are normally, they don't have a flavor, but they are they tie other elements together that don't necessarily play nice with each other, and they make them work. So what we accidentally did was we threw an ingredient into a very complicated recipe that made all of these things play together very nicely.
It's like the dude's carpet. It ties the
it ties the whole room together.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So for batch 2, you all tweaked it a little bit.
Yeah, we brought Aisha in, and the problem was that so we wanted to get her input on it, but the thing was we already knew it worked.
Yeah,
so it was like
you're acting like tell me what you want, but you've already started making the beer.
Well, and I spiked the first suggestion right out of the gate, and this again is from living around here. She has been in Louisville a lot, working with Chef Edward Lee and Anthony Bourdain on some kind of a project over there. So she's been around quite a bit.
Yeah,
and she likes bourbon, and so she wanted to amp up the boozy flavor on it, and I was like, no, we can't do that, because that's why when I have a really bad Kentucky bourbon barrel ale, not necessarily a brand, but
not by any local brewery.
I'm not. It's just, let's say it's from Kentucky and it's a bourbon barrel.
It's a Kentucky ale in a barrel.
All you can taste is that nasty aftertaste or whatever. In fact, here's a fun trick to play on friends of yours. Get one of those. Get a bourbon barrel ale from Kentucky. From
Kentucky,
somewhere from downtown, maybe. Who knows? And then try it side by side with Wood Stout and watch people spit out the other one. It's outstanding.
Oh yeah, it's completely different.
So I said no boozy. We can't do that. That's and it sort of goes against one of Stone's principles, which is they don't like to jack up any of the flavors.
Okay.
They like to sort of get this it's more like a choir, and then
balance.
And
that's really what I think they've kind of been acclaimed for over the years, and that's why they've kind of stood the test of time, because their stuff is really well balanced.
Yeah, they don't tend to go over the top, or when they do, at least they point it out, like when they did Crime and Punishment.
I was about to say, except the chili.
Yeah.
That's just too much.
It's Greg's weakness. He likes spicy stuff too much, and Crime was barely drinkable, and Punishment is insane. Greg keeps a bottle in his fridge at his house just to inflict on people who haven't tried it.
When that first came out, Kevin Patterson over the Beer Trap he opened a bottle, and he probably bought it because he was taking shots, and as people were walking in the door, he was like, "Hey, try this. This is going to be great." And he handed me one as I walked in the door, and I was like, "Okay, free beer." And as I was drinking, I was thinking why is Kevin giving me free beer? And then it hit my lips, and I was like,
"Oh, it's battery acid."
Yeah, it's the worst thing ever.
It's good for cooking, though. It's not bad.
I imagine, yeah.
But so Aisha said, well, I guess we could do the stereotypical thing and do chocolate. And I'm like, let's just go with that. That should be fine. Because there wasn't any chocolate in the first batch. And I was like, I'm kind of curious to see, because everybody thought there was.
Yeah.
But there wasn't. So I was like, well, let's put that in there and find out. And it turned out it was too much.
Okay.
The chocolatey thing was so strong. Yeah. It didn't overpower it per se, but it tasted a lot more like a dessert beer, I guess, more than anything else.
And that was the smallest batch that you all made.
Yeah.
And that only hit, if I'm not mistaken, that was like Southern California,
and Kentucky, and that's it.
And I assume you had a hand in the hit coming to Kentucky.
Yeah, because they made a special, they didn't make enough of it because Stone at the time had a capacity problem.
Yeah.
Which they're just now solving, but they didn't have any more room to make anything else.
Yeah.
So, and then they knew they wanted to get some out to me. So it was really funny when they announced it because, of course, beer people across the nation were like, released in Southern California and Kentucky?
Yeah, they're like, what? I'm on some like beer groups online, and everybody was like asking me,
I was like, what
the hell? Why over there? And at first I was like, well, it beats me.
There's no telling here. Who knows?
But then obviously, the instant correlation is like, well, it's got to be because
they were trying to get some out to me. And so the funny thing was, is all the beer geeks in Kentucky were living large that year because it was the only place you could get it.
I remember online I was quote unquote taking orders from guys like, all right, how many bottles did you want? But even when it landed here, it went so fast. I got like maybe 2 or 3 bottles.
They ended up even with that limited run. I talked to the distributor. They said they only got 1/10 of what actually was ordered by everybody.
Wow.
And so it was a mess. But then so batch 3, what they did was they decided they liked the chocolate, but they didn't want to go so strong with it. So they had some batch 2 left over, and they cut batch 3 with batch 2.
Okay.
And so there's a little bit of chocolatey in the background of it, but now it's like if you try it, it's been out a year. And by the way, if you get a hold of a bottle of this, I don't recommend drinking it for at least 6 months minimum.
Okay.
And
you talking about the new one?
Yeah, well, yeah, any of them. But so the other ones have been out for a year or longer. Drink those whenever you want.
Sure, yeah.
But the new one, I would wait until December. Easy.
Okay. Is it a little hot?
It's not like it's a little hot, but it tastes like using the choir analogy, it tastes like the choir's still warming up.
Okay.
So like it's very, very complicated, and don't worry, there should be plenty of it going around because we had a problem during batch 2 of getting enough in town.
Yeah.
So Greg finally said, look, just give me the name of every bar in Lexington that you want to make sure gets one of these things.
That's cool, man.
So that's almost all of them. So don't worry, you'll be able to find it at some point. Just keep your eyes peeled.
That's cool. Okay, so batch 3 was kind of a blend.
They went back and blended it. So in batch 4, I don't know what they did. I have no idea.
Okay. The essential recipe was the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what they've been doing is they've been swapping in, for batch 1, they had some stuff. So, they put rice hulls in it, too. I forget what that does exactly. But there's not enough rice hulls in the world to make as much as they want to make of this stuff.
Yeah.
So, they replaced it in batch 2 and batch 3 with something else. So, they're refining the recipe to get this to the point where they eventually want to make it to, they're shooting for, at some point, having a supply of about 10 million case equivalents.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Is what they're gunning for. They're nowhere close yet. They haven't even hit 1 million yet, but I think they did.
That's a huge seller.
Yeah. Well, I think it was close to 500,000 last year, and that it's still sold out in 24 hours. That's a lot of beer. Yeah. That's huge.
I just don't remember the first batch moving that quickly.
Yeah, it was on the shelves and gone. It just disappeared.
The first one did. I remember it moving really fast.
Yeah, I never saw one on the shelves.
Yeah. This is the nerd in me, but I've always been a really big fan of the bottle art. Does Will? I don't know Will Wheaton personally, but I kind of figured, he's got like the comic book roots and stuff. Does he have a big kind of influence on what goes on the bottle, or do you guys just kind of like talk about it? And
actually, they tell us later is what happens, and they always have sort of a theme. And usually, what they do is they actually commission famous comic book artists to do the photos. And so, batch 1, we had a friend of ours do it, who's got his Twitter handle is Hijinks and Soon. He's got a web comic out there that he does, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But so batch 2, they decided they were going to commission a comic book artist and donate a portion of the proceeds to Hero Initiative, I think, or Hero Project.
Okay.
Which is basically about keeping the government out of comic books and helping kids learn how to read and all the good stuff.
Yeah.
And so they got Dave Gibbons for the second bottle, who was the guy who was the artist on Watchmen.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, you got to be kidding me. And he was so much fun. He didn't make it out to Comic-Con because he's older and he lives in England, and he's like, screw it, I don't want to travel.
Yeah, I don't need to.
It's like, it's a big pain in the butt. But he told all of us, he's like, hey, if you're ever in England, give me a call. And I'm like, I am totally taking you up on that, dude.
I just happened to be driving by Big Ben, and I gave you a
If I were older in England, I wouldn't want to go all the way to I've been to Comic-Con.
It's a long way,
insane,
man.
It's also just nerd insanity.
Yeah, it is. Like, I'm going because they always do their big...
The one in San Diego? The big one?
Yeah, they do the official launch for the Wood Stout on the Wednesday before. But that's as close as I get to Comic-Con. I don't actually go. I just hang out nearby, basically.
Guys
just walk around with dog dealers.
Playing with figurines and just nerding out and people in costumes.
Wow, some of those costumes.
Yeah, they have 100,000 people go to it or something like that. It's insane.
So was batch 2, was that the one where you all did like the multiple labels, or was that number 3?
No, that was the first one, actually, was multiple labels. Second batch was they did sort of Watchmen-esque because it was given.
Yeah, I remember there's like the 3 guys kind of standing like in sequence, like staring off into the distance.
That was the third one. The third one was we got what's his name? David, I'm blanking on it. He's the guy that did Superman Red Sun, which was a graphic novel from the early 2000s about. It was a really interesting premise. It was what if Superman landed on Earth 12 hours later. in the middle of the Soviet Union.
Interesting.
Because, it could have happened.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was neat. So there's a very Soviet-style theme. And then this year they went with Star Wars, and they got Jimmy Palmiotti, who is actually the editor-in-chief of Marvel, and then his wife Amanda. God, I'm gonna have to remember her name for it because I've actually met her a couple times.
Yeah,
but they got her. She's a famous comic book artist, and they did the Star Wars theme.
That's so cool. So I mean, it's like every facet of this beer is it's kind of geeked out.
It's a nerd beer.
Yeah, that's why I appreciate it so much. And today is coincidentally this is the actual release date. You're telling me, not in the stores, but from the brewery.
Yeah, I confirmed it just because I wanted to make sure. Like, is this actually showing up now? No, it's rolling out on trucks today out of Escondido, California. Which will put it here if it works like it has in previous years. Earliest will be next week, maybe.
A year and a half. They'll be at Beaumont in 5 years.
Actually, that's so Texas gets it like 2 months later because apparently they're odd to me. Their alcohol, their state level alcohol beverage commission are just jerks.
Okay, well,
and they sit on it a while. So the best chance you have of catching it is if you have to go to Texas sometime in September.
Yeah,
because nobody's looking for it at that point. They think it's all gone. Everybody shows up in Texas.
Waiting on batch 5 at that point.
All right, let's buy our tickets to Austin.
Exactly.
Right. After it's all sold out here,
I'm sure you've probably been there.
Yeah. So, but there's going to be. So they're going to do a batch every year. They're trying to get it up, and then we have a variant version coming out that's a real shot in the dark.
Nice.
They let me pick all the flavor stuff because apparently I'm just lucky. And one of the things that Greg wanted to do, because he's insane, is Stone has this huge expansion they're doing in Berlin, Germany, that they're going to bring craft beer to Europe. And so he wanted to do something with Jaeger barrels.
Oh my!
Which I'm like, oh god,
no.
I know that's what I said. I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
That sounds great.
I was like, well, we can't do
every college kid's nightmare.
Yeah, well, I was like, well, we can't just like put the Wood Stout in Jaeger barrels. I'm pretty sure that's going to be a disaster. So he's like, well, what do you suggest? And I was like, well, so what worked for us last time was boozy and nuts. And if we're stuck with Jaeger, I went around, I did some research on to find out, like, so let's go with this whole dessert profile thing. And by the way, this is not a sweet beer. It's sweet-ish, but it's not like it's you can put a scoop of ice cream in it and it works. But
you can put a scoop of ice cream in anything.
Yeah, but it's bigger people like it, so that's the good news.
That's what I do. I don't know. I put ice cream in my pizza.
Yeah, well, Will's wife Ann discovered that. She called it a Woot Beer Float, and it is good.
That's cute.
But I looked up. I was like, desserts made with Jaeger and nuts, and came across marzipan.
Marzipan is Jaeger?
No, but if you add that to Jaeger, you get one of the top-selling flavors of biscotti in Europe.
You're kidding.
And so, believe it or not, apparently that works. For those of you who are wondering, sort of, if you haven't had a lot of marzipan, think fortune cookies.
Yeah, I like marzipan. Marzipan's great.
I don't think I've ever had marzipan.
I hate Jaeger.
I think fortune cookies, and apparently that and Jägermeister goes.
Well, you're from Eastern Kentucky. So.
Well, I'm from here.
Oh, from here, right.
I've heard of marzipan. I think I knew of marzipan when I was in elementary.
It's like fortune cookies or almond cookies. It's the same thing.
Okay.
So it's got sort of that flavor to it. That weird sort of unknown whatever. Flavor. Yeah, and that mixes with Jaeger. So
so that's what you came up with.
Yeah, they're doing a test batch right now to find out if that actually works, because they don't want to blow, they want to have this big rollout about, we made this special release, whatever, and it sucks.
Yeah. Are there no other liqueurs they could use from Germany?
I told them
it's Jaeger.
That's what I said. I was like, are you kidding me? But
schnapps.
Well, there's apparently a problem also where Germany's got a very strict beer purity law that goes back 500 years.
You and I had an extensive.
But a lot of those beers they're doing are not going to be called beer.
Yeah. They're going to call them something else.
Like malt beverage or something else. They're not going to call them beer.
They can even call them by their style name. And
but on the bottles,
can still be an IPA.
But on the bottles, it won't use the word beer.
Yeah, it's like champagne in France, I guess, or something, or cognac or whatever. So who knows? But so they're doing a test run on that to see if it works, because they want to be sure.
That's cool. If they send any of that this way,
Greg is. It should go both directions. If it succeeds, what would be really funny is that this is probably going to be a one-off unless lightning strikes twice. In which case, we'll be doing like a Wood Stout 5 and a 5.1.
Maybe this is a whole new thing in craft beer, Jaeger barrels.
Yeah,
they'll start the whole new fashionable.
Well, because I don't think anybody's doing it. I mean, somebody probably tried it, but how could that possibly be good, right?
Well, it all had to start. And you're listening to 93.9 WLXU, by the way. We got me, Matt, and and Jeff and Drew Curtis with us, special guest. And we're talking about Wood Stout, the beer that he actually collaborated on, has been collaborating on. But when it comes to barrels, I think even like the first use of oak barrels barrels was just kind of out of necessity. It wasn't like, oh, I want to lick the side of this, this tree and it's going to taste good. It's like, these are the vats that we have.
No, historically, beer was put in a barrel.
Yeah, exactly right.
It was how you stored it because it was available. And the other thing too was it was a really good way to, if you think about the amount of corn that it takes to make like a barrel of bourbon.
Yeah.
And bourbon doesn't spoil either. So that's a fantastic way if you're like a farmer in the 18th century and you're like, well, all this stuff's going to rot, or we could turn it into bourbon.
Turn it into booze.
It's very portable too, because it's a tiny liftable size. As opposed to all these crops that would have just spoiled.
Yeah. That's pre-social media and long lines.
But we got bourbon barrels now, and people have been using a lot of wine barrels lately. Cognac barrels have been really popular. It's like all the spirits.
So Jaeger's next, man.
Jaeger. I've seen some weird, not Brewdog, McKellar. They've been using Grand Marnier barrels, which I don't get a lot.
We had a Westbrook like that too.
Out of Grand Marnier.
It's actually called Grand Marnier, I think.
Okay, and I don't get a lot of that, that kind of orange liqueur out of it. But I see no reason why, people wouldn't start using Jaeger. Whether it's good or not, I don't know.
You got to find something that works to start with, I think, and then after that.
What's that stuff out of Chicago that is just like, I've never had it. It's horrid. Bourbon County actually made a batch. I can't remember. There's some liqueur that comes out of Chicago that was
amaretto.
Is that what they dump in the river to turn it green?
Apparently, yeah. It's some like Polish thing or something. I don't know.
Whoa! Turn it down a notch here for our Polish listeners.
All right, well, why don't you cue us up there?
All right,
take a little short break.
Where are we? So you're listening to WLXU FM 93.9, listening to community radio.
Welcome back to COCBLOK, the Coalition of Craft Beer Lovers of Kentucky on 93.9 WLXU. I'm Matt.
Hey now, I'm Jeff.
And we have a special guest, Mr. Drew Curtis from FARC.com, and Woot Stout with us. So we've been talking about beer and politics. And
Stone and Jägermeister.
And Jaeger barrels.
Running for governor. Man, it's one of the greatest shows ever.
You want to know how many times? You want to know how many times I've thrown up on Jaeger in college?
Yeah, exactly.
Every time.
Yeah.
How do you drink Jaeger and not throw up?
It's at least 7. My wife actually, she used to work in a some bar over on Buckhorn. I can't remember what it's called. And
that's Squires.
Yeah. She worked at Squires, and this is a long time ago. It's different ownership now, but at the time they were just they took Jaeger bombs like water. It was like that was their water cooler. It's freaking Jaeger and Red Bull, and they should be like pop.
I used to go to Maxwell's, and they used to do $1.25 Jaeger and Rumpelmans 3 days a week.
Oh,
yeah. I can't tell you how many days I woke up being drunk for 2 days.
I woke up like
you get 10 o'clock in the morning. It's like I'm just forget it. It's not happening.
So you travel a lot. I've kind of been like talking to you here and there, and you have been I guess all around the world. Mm-hmm. What kind of places do you really like to go to?
I like England a lot because I lived there for a year.
Okay.
But I really enjoy dropping into places like pretty much anywhere that I know somebody who lives there.
Yeah.
And that's what's nice about running a website like FARC is that everywhere I go, somebody who reads it lives in the city I'm in.
Yeah.
So it ends up to some really ridiculous extremes. Like I was in Armenia one time.
Armenia?
Really?
Yeah. And I was hanging out with Alexis Ohanian, who's a friend of mine.
That's where you're from, isn't it?
Part of my family.
Okay.
There you go. You mean Glendale, right? Glendale. That's where they all moved to later. Yeah. But I went to Armenia and with Alexis Ohanian, who founded Reddit, and he was taking a year
Armenian,
off.
Right?
Yeah, he's 4th generation, and I went there. We did a joint Reddit FARC party, and 25 people showed up. I was like, what?
Wow. Yeah.
Holy crap! And it was all women too, because in Armenia, social media management is a woman's job.
Really?
And I was like, that's interesting that they gave you guys the most important job, and they're like, yeah, we didn't tell them, because they thought it was like supposed to. Well, it's a communications thing. It's for women, and they're like, So I was like, well, good job. Hang on to that one. Yeah. When they figure it out, make sure you fight them tooth and nail.
Yeah. So when you go to places like England, I guess I've never been there. I haven't been out of the country except for Mexico, and it was a horrible experience. But when you go to like England, the beer scene is a little bit different there, or maybe it's not. I know a lot of the styles that we have American styles based on really originated there, but they were all, I don't want to say tame, but it's like when stuff starts out, the IPA wasn't nearly as hoppy as it is now.
Right, yeah.
But you go to a place like England, I don't know, I know cask ale was a really big deal.
Yeah, they had a thing called in the 90s was like the real IPA movement when I was living out there.
Was it?
Yeah.
Camera.
Because they had a ton of stuff like that. They would float around, and so there was. I lived in Nottingham, and there was a place called the Bell, and they had like a guest tap that would rotate through all the time. But I don't know if it was the same situation as here, where they just relaxed the laws or what. But they had two things happen over there simultaneously. One was that. The other thing that happened was that a chain called Witherspoons popped up and started buying all the pubs.
Yeah. Really? It's kind of like the way our movie system used to work here.
Yeah.
Where theaters and production were tied together in the same thing.
All the same thing.
So pubs and breweries were tied together.
Yeah.
So if you went to a pub, you could only get like one beer or two, but whatever came out of
it
that
was
one
all
brewery.
like just like pap stuff, basically.
That's where you get your landlord.
And in fact, in Germany, still like that. That's where they got it from. But then they broke that up with them. Part of what Prohibition did was stop that from happening. I'm not sure why that mattered, but in England, apparently they backed that out and it started going the other way. So Witherspoon's probably makes their own beer now, but at the time did not. But they started just buying little pubs and just sort of rebranding them.
Oh, buying the pubs that were making their own beer, and they were...
Yeah, and then we started rebranding them, and then I haven't been keeping up with where it's gone to since then. I mean, basically, they were turning it into Starbucks, which is not exactly the greatest thing ever, but there you go.
I guess they make money off it.
Yeah, it works. Like I said, it's
British capitalism.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so when you're on stateside, you go to California a lot, obviously.
Yep, and New York a lot, too. I'm in New York every other week, probably.
Yeah, I don't think I would enjoy New York.
It's okay for a couple of days.
I hate Manhattan.
Yeah, the problem is, like, things are so expensive there.
Yeah.
Like, the guys I'm working on a project with, which is, I would explain it, but it's just boring and nobody cares. But one of the guys who's the money guy has a couple of extra condos that he doesn't use.
Yeah.
So I stay at a condo there that I consider to be like it's about the size of the place I had when I got out of college.
Yeah.
It's like 2 bedrooms, 800 square feet.
Yeah. That's a
$15 million.
Yeah, that's like a mansion for Manhattan.
Oh, it's insane. And everybody's like, "Oh my God, you have so much space." I'm like,
yeah.
My house is bigger than yours.
Basically, New York invented the tiny house movement before the home craft, whatever that network got.
Except in that same amount of real estate, they could fit like 55 other units, whereas the tiny house movement is like have your own little.
Manhattan is the tiny house movement.
Yeah.
But I've found all kinds of like travel hacks just to travel around. Most of which are well known, but like one of them is the Hotels Tonight app, which I think is at hotelsTonight.com. I'm not advertising for them. I'm just explaining that that app is fantastic because it's literally like hotels are like, okay, it's 5 o'clock, nobody's here.
Okay.
So they just fire sale everything.
Man, I've tried that. Like my wife and I, we went down to Alabama not too long ago. And we stayed halfway down in Birmingham. And I was like, it'd be really cool. I just started calling around. I figured somebody would have something late at night, like 10 o'clock at night, like that. They would just be like, just whatever. And it was like, our friends in the car ahead of us called, and they got a rate, and we called, and we got like a higher rate, and then we looked on Expedia, and it was like still cheaper, and I was like, there's got to be like a logical way. There's got to be some outlet where people are going to, gotta have to get rid of that.
That's what these guys did, and so like a normal hotel room in Manhattan, any size, is like $300 a night. But that app consistently $99 in decent places.
So we tried something like this at Heathrow Airport where we were coming through and we had to stay the night, just show up, look for something. We ended up sleeping in the chapel on the floor.
Well, that works.
Yeah, that worked. That was terrible. Yeah, we got yelled at by the Heathrow cops.
There you go.
You're sleeping and your kids are here. Terrible parents. Someone could kill your kids while you're sleeping in this chapel.
We paid for this. I swear we did.
No, we didn't pay for anything. There's no hotels. You couldn't get in the whole
literally.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were being sarcastic.
That's a true story, man.
So do you ever use like Airbnb or anything like that?
Yeah, actually exclusively that for the most part. Again, the same reason is because if I don't, but I more often than not I crash with friends.
But in Manhattan or in Brooklyn?
In Manhattan, I know these guys that have got these condos, so I just grab one of them. But I did it before I knew them in 2012 when Airbnb first came out. I tried it. And
all the food and beer is like down in Brooklyn or maybe up in Queens.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did an Airbnb over in Asheville, and I saw it, and I was like, "Oh man, this thing is a gold mine. Why haven't more people been doing this?" And I got it so cheap. Turns out I was staying in some girl's like 80-year-old house on the basement level of like the whole house was like 1,200 square feet, and it was like dirt cheap, dirt old, and we were staying like on the bottom level. She was living in the house that we were staying in, and it was so weird. And the stairwell that went up, she took plywood and covered it because I guess she has people come in all the time to kind of supplement her rent or whatever. So we could hear her like walking around and like arguing with her boyfriend and like making dinner, and like everything was so loud. Like she would flush the toilet and it sounded like the whole roof was going to collapse. And that was my experience. It was pretty cool.
We always do Airbnb when we go abroad.
Yeah,
but there's nobody there. It's just those apartments that people rent out all the time. And
well, you just need bigger space too, especially if you're traveling with like wife and kids.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got 3 kids.
That's what we do. And there's a kitchen where I can make my kid the pasta that is all he'll eat when we're in another country.
There you go.
Yeah. So what kind of beer do you like to drink on a daily basis?
I like just
everybody drinks like every day.
Yeah, I probably
by the hour, whichever.
People give me beer so much that I just sort of work through that.
Yeah.
So
that's a horrible problem.
I know it's my life. Nobody cries for me. But I've been working through some of the special batch stuff, like the ginger braggot that won the homebrew contest. I got a big growler of that I got two. I drank the first one on Saturday.
That was some good stuff. Yeah,
really
I forgot
good. We didn't get growlers. We were judges.
No, I got one.
Oh, you got a growler? Yeah, I got a growler.
Well, they didn't
I got a growler.
give it to you. You got to go over there. But I was at West 6 last night, and they still have it on. So
that's good stuff. Yeah, we were actually all three judges of the homebrew contest.
Yeah.
We know so many people that judge. And when I first started getting into beer, I was like, how cool would it be to be a judge and get to drink beer all the time? And then you actually do it, and you're like, oh my God, this sucks.
Now look where you are.
Now I'm just talking about those people. But it's not, it's a job. It really is. And there's some really good beer that you get to try, but a lot of it is really bad beer. But not even that. Beyond that, it's like it is a job where you actually have to focus on what you're doing. You can't really even enjoy it.
You can't just like screw around and not worry about it.
I had a different impression of what was going on that night.
Kind of like how we screwed around. But that was actually really good. The ginger braggot. I think the braggets and the meads and stuff, it's going to be a big move.
But also hats off to West 6 for doing that, for putting people's beers on. I think Ethereal might be doing that too, but I don't know if that was a competition. They're putting some homebrewers stuff on.
Yeah, that was a really good one. And I thought the batch that they made, I talked to the guy who made it. He said they changed it up a little bit.
Yeah, it was a little different. Yeah,
but they had to for reasons. But
it's great for West 6 to support local homebrewers. That's the second year in the row they've done that. Yeah, and I assume they're going to continue to do it.
Yeah, I hope so, because that one was really good, and there were a number of them that were actually pretty good. And there were a bunch that also really sucked out loud to the point where I was like, I don't believe that the people who made this tried it before they sent it. I was like,
some infected ones.
No offense to the guy who did or woman who did the mint habanero chocolate. What was that thing?
I don't know.
Jägermeister barrel age.
something. I don't know.
Like that.
Someone's
with peanut butter.
Someone's going to write to us.
Something's wrong with that one. I don't know what's going on.
I've been making Jaeger beer for years. And I'm offended by
peanut butter stout aged in Jaeger barrels. That one didn't work.
Yeah, it's called Mad Libs beer.
That actually sounds pretty good.
Yeah,
we'll make that. Yeah.
What are you doing after this?
We'll submit that to the next homebrew competition. Well, I figure you probably drink a lot of stouts, and maybe that's not the case because you
actually I don't surprisingly. I tried like crazy to enjoy Guinness and never took.
No, stouts. We said stout.
Well, yes, I know. Well, you know what I'm talking about.
Not chocolate milk.
That's the gateway stout.
Yeah.
And it didn't work.
I actually still enjoy a Guinness every once in a while. If I'm in some macro pub.
Oh man, I can't remember last time I had a Guinness.
Well, this is because you're better than all of us. So.
Yeah, of course. But what's that got to do with what we're talking about? We're talking about Guinness.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of Nitro, too, as far as, go back to that mouthfeel thing. Mm-hmm. It's cheating, but I mean, it's good, man. I love getting a big Boddington.
The left hand, then, maybe.
Yeah, are you a big hop guy, hops?
No, I'm not that either, actually. I am impressed by subtlety. Yeah. I get the same taste in music, too. Like, silence impresses me more because it's hard. Yeah. Like, human beings tend to make things overly complex. It's just what we do. And so when you have something...
Human beings are Americans.
Yeah, pretty much. And when you have something really simple, the realization that actually took some serious restraint, because anybody who ever made a recipe was like always like trying to mess with it.
Oh yeah,
they're like, oh, we got to do this and that. To be able to hold back and go, no, this is good, as it is, this is perfect. Yeah. So I tend to like stuff like that. So Greg at Stone introduced me to The Alchemist.
Yes.
And he gave me a couple of their beers right when they first opened because he ran into them.
That's cool, man.
And that stuff was so outstanding. I was in Maine and Boston about 3 weeks ago, and I was like, how far is this from Boston? 4 hours.
Yeah. All right.
Never mind.
Yeah, they've kind of become a gold standard.
Yeah, good. That stuff is good. You could drink a bucket of that like every night, easy. Like if I could choose to drink something all the time, their stuff.
Heady Topper.
Out of a bucket.
Yeah, it is good.
Out of a milk jug in Alabama.
Yes, I've done that.
Yeah. Heady Topper out of a milk jug.
Yeah. So
it would be good.
We've done a lot.
We've said a lot, maybe too much.
Maybe not.
It's been a great show.
Yeah,
it's been amazing.
Drew, thanks for coming down, man.
We can all get dressed now.
Put our clothes back on from
back on.
Studio all the time.
It's good.
And you've been listening to COCBLOK, the Coalition of Craft Beer Lovers of Kentucky, with our special guest Drew Curtis on WLXU 93.9 FM. And see you next week.